what role has violence, or do you think violence has played in the evolution of Homo sapiens? So we are quite an intelligent, quite a beautiful, particular little branch on the evolutionary tree. What part of that was played by our tendency to be violent?
Well, I think that violence was responsible for creating your Homo sapiens. And that raises the question of what Homo sapiens is.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So, nowadays people begin the sort of concept of what Homo sapiens is by thinking about features that are very obviously different from all of the other species of Homo. Mm-hmm. And our large brain, our very rounded cranium, a relatively small face. These are characteristics which are developed in a relatively modern way by about 170,000 years ago, say. Mm-hmm. That's one of the earliest skulls in Africa that really captures that. But it has been argued that is an episode in a process that has been started substantially earlier. And there's no doubt that that's true. Homo sapiens is a species that has been changing pretty continuously throughout the length of time it's there. And it goes back to 300,000 years ago. 315 literally is the time, the best estimate of a date for a series of bones from Morocco that have been dated 3 or 4 years ago at that time and have been characterized as earliest Homo sapiens. Now, at that point, they are only beginning the trend of sapienization, and that trend consists basically of gracilization, of making our ancestors less robust, shorter faces, smaller teeth, smaller brow ridge, narrower face, thinner cranium, all these things that are associated with reduced violence. Okay, so that's saying that's Homo sapiens beginning. So it began sometime 300 to 400,000 years ago, because by 315,000 years ago, you've already got something recognizable.
So you're more on that side of things, that those is gradual process. It's not 150, 170,000 years ago. It started like 400,000 years ago, and it's just...
It started 300 to 400,000 years ago, and if you look at 170, it's got even more like us. And then if you look at 100, it's got more like us again. And if you look at 50, it's more like us again. Mm-hmm. It's all the way. It's just getting more and more like the moderns. So the question is, what happened between 300,000 and 400,000 years ago to produce Homo sapiens? Mm-hmm. And I think we have a pretty good answer now. And the answer comes from violence. And the story begins by focusing on this question. Why is it that in the human species, we are unique among all primates in not having an alpha male in any group, in the sense that what we don't have is an alpha male who personally beats up every other male? And the answer that has been portrayed most richly by Christopher Boehm, and whose work I've elaborated on, is that only in humans do you have a system by which any male who tries to bully others and become the alpha equivalent to an alpha gorilla or an alpha chimpanzee or an alpha bonobo or an alpha baboon or anything like that, any male who tries to do that in humans gets taken down by a coalition of beta males. Mm-hmm. And that coalition...
Yes. It's a really good picture of human society, yes. I like it.
Okay. So, and that's the way all our societies work now.
Yes.
And because individuals try and be alpha and then they get taken out.
I mean, we don't usually think of ourselves as beta males, but yes, I suppose that's what democracy is.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay, so at some point, alpha males get taken out. Well, what alpha males are males who respond with high reactive violence to any challenge to their status. You see it all the time in primates. Some beta male thinks he's getting strong and maturing in wisdom and so on, and he refuses to kowtow to the alpha male. And the alpha male comes straight in and charges at him. Or maybe he'll just wait for a few minutes and then take an opportunity to attack him. All of these primates have got a high tendency for reactive aggression. And that enables the possibility of alpha males. We don't. We have this great reduction, as I talked about earlier. And the question is, when did that reduction happen? Well, cut to the famous experiments by the Russian biologist Dmitry Belyaev, who tried domesticating wild animals. When you domesticate wild animals, what you're doing is reducing reactive aggression. You are selecting those individuals to breed who are most willing to be approached by a human or by another member of their own species and are least likely to erupt in a reactive aggression. And you only have to do that for a few generations to discover that there are changes in the skull. And those changes consist of shorter face, smaller teeth, reduced maleness. The males become increasingly female-like, and reduced brain size. Well, the changes that are characteristic of domesticated animals in general compared to wild animals are all found in Homo sapiens compared to our early ancestors. So it's a very strong signal that when we first see Homo sapiens, what we're seeing is evidence of a reduction in reactive aggression. And that suggests that what's happening with Homo sapiens is that that is the point at which there is selection against the alpha males. And therefore, the way in which the selection happened would have been the way it happens today. The beta males take them out. So I think that Homo sapiens is a species characterized by the suppression of reactive aggression as a kind of incidental consequence of the suppression of the alpha male. And the story of our species is the story of how the beta males took charge and have been responsible for the generation of a new kind of human, and incidentally, for imposing on the society a new set of values. Because when those beta males discovered that they could take out the previous alpha male, and continue to do so, because in every generation there'll always be some male who says, well, maybe I'll become the alpha male. Yes. And so they just keep chopping them down. In discovering that, they also obviously discovered that they could kill anybody in the group. Females, young males, anybody who didn't follow their values. And so this story is one in which the males of our species, and these would be the breeding males, have been able to impose their values on everybody else. And there is two kinds of values. There's one kind of value is things that are good for the group, like thou shalt not murder. And the other kind of value is things that are good for the males, such as, hey, guess what? When good food comes in, males get it first.
Yes. So, I mean, it's fascinating that kind of set of ideals could outcompete the others. Do you have a sense of why, or maybe you can comment on Neanderthals and all the other early humans? Why did Homo sapiens come to succeed and flourish, and all the other branches of evolution died out? Or got murdered out.
Nowadays, when Homo sapiens meets Homo sapiens, and we don't know each other initially, then conflict breaks out, and the more militarily able group wins. We've seen that everywhere throughout the age of exploration and throughout history. So I'm rather surprised. The conventional wisdom that you see nowadays in contemporary anthropology is very reluctant to point to success in warfare as the reason why sapiens wiped out Neanderthals within about 3,000 years of the sapiens coming into Europe 43,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And people are much more inclined to say, well, the Neanderthals were at low population density, so they just couldn't survive the demographic sort of sweep, or that disease came in. And maybe those things might have been important. But far and away the most obvious possibility is that sapiens were just were powerful. Everyone agrees they had larger groups. They had better weapons. They had projectile weapons, bows and arrows, to judge from the little microlith bits of flake, which the Neanderthals didn't. Nowadays there's evidence of interbreeding, quite extensive interbreeding between sapiens and Neanderthals, as well as with some other groups. And sometimes people say, well, so they loved each other. They made love, not war. Mm-hmm. I think they made love and war. And, it wouldn't necessarily have been too loving. I mean, if you just follow through from typical ethnographies nowadays of when dominant groups meet subordinate groups, they didn't know each other, then you can imagine that Neanderthal females would essentially be captured and taken into sapiens groups.